The haunting at Blackwood Manor. The wind whispered through the twisted branches of the old trees that loomed like ancient sentinels around Blackwood Manor. The mansion, once a grand spectacle, had succumbed to time and decay, now standing as a relic of a forgotten era on the outskirts of a fog-covered, remote town. The townsfolk dared not venture near the imposing structure, for they whispered tales of dark history, of unsolved mysteries, and of the vengeful spirit that haunted its halls. Sarah, a young historian with a burning curiosity, had heard these stories and was drawn to Blackwood Manor like a moth to a flame. The mansion's sinister reputation was a magnet for her inquisitive nature, and she had made it her mission to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its darkened walls. As the fog crept in, enshrouding the mansion in an eerie embrace, Sarah arrived, clutching her lantern for a semblance of comfort. The air was thick with tension, as if the very atmosphere resisted her intrusion. But Sarah was resolute. She had come armed with her research tools and a fearless heart, determined to unravel the enigma that had veiled Blackwood Manor for centuries. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of creaking floorboards, faded wallpaper, and dusty relics of a bygone era. The only light came from her lantern, casting eerie, elongated shadows on the cracked walls. Sarah made her way through the gloomy corridors, guided by the faint whisper of her own breath. Deep in the heart of the mansion, she stumbled upon a room, its door slightly ajar. The room was a forgotten sanctuary, with a large, ornate mirror framed by ancient, tattered curtains. Sarah's breath caught as she saw her own reflection, pale and trembling, in the mirror's silvery surface. Determined to put her fears aside, Sarah ventured further, discovering a hidden chest filled with yellowed, dusty manuscripts. She gingerly opened one of them, revealing the diary of Samuel, the restless spirit that was said to haunt the mansion. Samuel's words leapt from the pages, an anguished account of his life, his murder, and the dark secrets that Blackwood Manor held. As Sarah pored over the diary, the atmosphere in the room grew oppressive, as if the very walls were listening to her every breath. Suddenly, a cold gust of air swept through the room, extinguishing her lantern. Panic surged through her veins as the room plunged into darkness. She fumbled for her lantern, her heart racing, but before she could relight it, she heard the whisper of a voice. "Sarah," it hissed, a spectral whisper that seemed to come from every corner of the room. "Who's there?" Sarah quavered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah," the voice repeated, more insistent now, "you have awakened me from my eternal slumber. You must pay for your curiosity." A ghostly figure materialized before her eyes, its form twisted and tortured. It was Samuel, the vengeful spirit, his hollow eyes fixed on her with a burning intensity. His translucent figure seemed to seep through the very walls, an otherworldly presence that defied the laws of the living. Sarah stumbled backward, her heart pounding as she realized the depth of the peril she had invited into the mansion. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she stammered, her voice trembling. Samuel's response was a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the mansion, shaking its very foundations. The diary fell from Sarah's trembling hands, and she felt an icy grip seize her throat. The ghostly apparition advanced toward her, his outstretched hand crackling with spectral energy. Desperate and filled with terror, Sarah managed to free herself from Samuel's grip and raced through the mansion's dark corridors, searching for an escape. The malevolent spirit pursued her relentlessly, taunting her with eerie whispers that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. As Sarah fled through the twisting labyrinth of the mansion, she stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed behind a bookshelf. Desperation lent her strength, and she pushed her way into the chamber, slamming the door shut behind her. She gasped for breath, her pulse racing as she realized she was trapped. The chamber was dimly lit, its walls adorned with faded, tattered tapestries that depicted scenes of violence and despair. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, and Sarah knew she was not alone. Samuel's chilling laughter echoed in her ears, and then he manifested before her, his spectral form writhing with malevolence. "You can't escape, Sarah," he hissed, his voice echoing with rage. Cornered and desperate, Sarah reached for the ancient, ornate mirror on the wall. She remembered the diary she had found and the secrets it held. With a trembling hand, she held the mirror up to the ghostly apparition. It screamed in agony, its form writhing and contorting in the reflection. The room filled with a blinding, otherworldly light, and the mansion itself seemed to shake as if in protest. With a final, deafening scream, Samuel was consumed by the mirror, his anguished spirit imprisoned once more. The mansion grew still, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Sarah knew that the malevolent spirit of Samuel had been vanquished, at least for now. Her heart still raced, but a sense of relief washed over her. She had unraveled the secrets of Blackwood Manor, and in doing so, had paid a steep price for her curiosity. As she left the decaying mansion, the fog had lifted, and the old trees seemed to stand taller, as if they, too, had witnessed the vanquishing of a dark presence. Sarah's adventure had left her forever changed, a living testament to the unforgiving nature of vengeful spirits. As she looked back at the mansion one last time, she knew she had uncovered a truth that was better left buried in the shadows of Blackwood Manor. The whispering shadows of Ravenswood Forest. Ravenswood Forest, an ancient realm draped in perpetual mist, was an eerie, unfathomable place. Its gnarled trees reached out like skeletal fingers, their branches entwined with secrets and mysteries. The forest was a place where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred, and only the daring or the desperate ventured into its dimly lit pathways. Mia, a reclusive artist, had always been captivated by the forest's enigmatic allure. The tales whispered by villagers and the lore passed down through generations spoke of strange occurrences and the ghostly inhabitants that dwelled within the shadows of Ravenswood. Mia's heart, fueled by the need for inspiration, yearned to unravel the mysteries concealed beneath the forest's thick canopy. One fateful evening, Mia made her decision. Armed with her canvas, brushes, and a heart heavy with anticipation, she ventured into Ravenswood Forest. The fog hung thick in the air, obscuring her path and casting an otherworldly glow upon the gnarled trees. The very atmosphere seemed to pulse with an uncanny energy, as if the forest itself were a living, breathing entity. Mia wandered deeper into the forest, her senses heightened as she took in the eerie, creeping ambience. The whispers of the villagers echoed in her mind, warning her to turn back. But her artistic curiosity drove her forward. She set up her easel in a small clearing, illuminated only by the faint light of her lantern. With each stroke of her brush, Mia's surroundings transformed onto her canvas. The ghostly shapes of the trees, the mist that clung to every surface, and the palpable sense of foreboding were captured with uncanny precision. She lost herself in her art, her mind attuned to the mysterious energies of Ravenswood. As the night deepened, Mia felt a subtle change in the forest's atmosphere. The shadows that danced in her peripheral vision seemed to come to life, swirling around her like silent specters. Her painted trees began to sway gently, and her lantern flickered, casting eerie, elongated shadows that merged with the very essence of the forest. A voice, soft as a sigh, whispered in the darkness. "Mia," it called, a wordless breath that seemed to emanate from the very air she breathed. Startled, Mia paused her work and strained to discern the source of the voice. Her heart quickened as the forest responded, the very ground beneath her feet vibrating with an otherworldly pulse. "Mia," the voice continued, a touch more insistent. "You have awakened us from our slumber. You must pay for your intrusion." As the voice grew more pronounced, the forest came alive. The gnarled trees reached out with ghostly branches, and the mist thickened, enveloping Mia in its chilling embrace. Her paintings, too, seemed to breathe, their colors shifting and swirling as if they had taken on a life of their own. A sense of dread gnawed at Mia's soul as she realized she had unknowingly tapped into the supernatural forces that dwelled within Ravenswood. The ghostly inhabitants were roused, and their insistent whispers filled her ears, urging her to heed their warning. With trembling hands, Mia gathered her belongings and stumbled back along the dimly lit pathways, desperate to escape the forest's clutches. But the spirits of Ravenswood were relentless, their spectral forms materializing before her. Each step she took met with an echoing footfall. Mia's lantern flickered and sputtered, its light waning as the forest seemed to swallow her whole. She could no longer distinguish the boundary between her paintings and the very trees that surrounded her. Panic surged through her veins as she felt her soul being tugged into the shadows. She realized then that the malevolent spirits of Ravenswood Forest craved her very essence, her creativity, her life force. They hungered for her soul, eager to make her one of their own, trapped in an eternal torment within the forest's depths. As Mia's lantern finally went out, plunging her into utter darkness, she knew she was at the mercy of the ghostly inhabitants. Their chilling whispers filled her mind, drowning out her own thoughts, their haunting voices echoing with ancient grievances. The forest seemed to close in around her, the gnarled trees converging with spectral limbs, and the mist thickening until it was all she could see. The boundary between reality and the supernatural had dissolved completely. In the heart of the forest, Mia's last breath was stolen by the spirits of Ravenswood, her very essence absorbed into their eternal darkness. Her canvas and brushes, now abandoned in the eerie clearing, would remain as a testament to her ill-fated journey into the mysterious, unforgiving depths of the ancient forest. And as dawn broke, the villagers heard the whispers of the forest, a mournful lament carried on the morning breeze. They knew that another soul had been claimed by the malevolent spirits of Ravenswood, forever entwined in the eerie, dimly lit pathways of the enigmatic forest. The descent into Midnight Street. The quiet suburban street known as Midnight Street was the embodiment of normalcy during the daylight hours. Houses with well-manicured lawns, picket fences, and cheerful neighbors who exchanged pleasantries characterized the seemingly idyllic neighborhood. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a sinister transformation unfolded, and Midnight Street emerged as an eerie, dimly lit thoroughfare where nightmares were born. Mark, an insomniac haunted by the relentless torment of sleeplessness, had been wandering Midnight Street for weeks. It had become his nightly ritual, a desperate attempt to find solace in the quietude of the nocturnal world. He couldn't remember when he had last slept peacefully, the terrors that visited him in the night forcing him to confront the shadows that lurked within his own mind. As Mark strolled down Midnight Street, the pallid glow of the street lamps cast elongated, haunting shadows that played tricks on his senses. The houses, once filled with life and laughter, now stood as dark, foreboding sentinels that seemed to close in around him. The silence was deafening, a suffocating cloak that wrapped itself around his consciousness. Mark had always been aware of the fragility of the human mind, but his nightly forays into Midnight Street revealed the hidden terrors that lurked beneath the mundane. Each footfall on the cracked pavement seemed to resonate with a sinister undertone, as if the very street were whispering its malevolent secrets. One night, as Mark descended deeper into Midnight Street, he noticed a change in the atmosphere. The air grew dense with apprehension, and the flickering street lamps cast eerie, erratic shadows. He quickened his pace, an uneasy feeling gnawing at him, but there was no escape from Midnight Street's clutches. Ghostly apparitions began to materialize before him, their translucent figures shifting in and out of the dimly lit surroundings. Their mournful, hollow eyes seemed to pierce through Mark's very soul, and he could hear their ghostly wails echoing in the night. "Help us," they whispered, their voices a chilling chorus that reverberated through the deserted street. "We are trapped in this darkness. Save us." The apparitions reached out to Mark, their cold, insubstantial fingers brushing against his skin. Panic surged through him as he realized that he was no longer in control. The specters seemed to beckon him, to draw him into the heart of Midnight Street's sinister web. Mark's descent into madness accelerated, his grip on reality slipping as he tried to distinguish the line between the waking world and the nightmare that Midnight Street had become. The ghostly inhabitants tormented him with visions of unspeakable horrors, and he found himself questioning his own sanity. The houses that lined the street were no longer empty shells but seemed to breathe with a malevolent life of their own. The windows flickered with eerie lights, and haunting cries echoed from within. Mark could no longer discern whether the houses were his refuge or his prison. As he ventured further, the street itself seemed to twist and writhe, the pavement cracking and shifting beneath his feet. The ground pulsed with a sinister heartbeat, and the very reality of Midnight Street warped around him. Mark was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, where the boundaries of the mind and the external world were indistinguishable. Mark's torment reached its peak as he stumbled upon a hidden, forgotten corner of Midnight Street. There, a towering oak tree cast its gnarled branches like grotesque hands reaching for the heavens. The ground beneath the tree was marred by a gaping chasm, a sinister maw that seemed to lead into the very depths of despair. The ghostly inhabitants converged around the tree, their hollow eyes fixed on Mark with an unrelenting hunger. Their whispers grew into a cacophony of anguish, echoing the torments of those trapped in the dark heart of Midnight Street. In a climactic moment of revelation, Mark understood the sinister secret behind the street. It was a place where the fragile boundaries of reality and nightmare had eroded, where the darkness of the human mind had found a physical manifestation. Midnight Street was a prison for tormented souls, a place where the hidden terrors of the human psyche were trapped, yearning for release. With a surge of determination, Mark reached deep into his own fractured consciousness and summoned the strength to confront the malevolent spirits. He faced the darkest corners of his mind, where his own inner demons had contributed to the nightmarish transformation of Midnight Street. As he grappled with his own fears, the specters before him writhed in agony. Their forms began to dissipate, and the oppressive atmosphere that had gripped Midnight Street slowly lifted. The houses ceased their sinister whispers, and the gnarled tree stood still, no longer reaching for Mark's soul. With a final, haunting cry, the apparitions vanished into the night, their ethereal figures merging with the shadows of Midnight Street. Mark stood in the eerie silence, his breath heavy with the weight of his ordeal. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Midnight Street returned to its facade of suburban tranquility. The houses, the pavement, and the street lamps appeared as they had during the daylight hours, their secrets buried beneath layers of normalcy. Mark knew that he had faced the fragility of his own mind and the hidden terrors that lurked within. Midnight Street had been a reflection of his inner torment, a place where the boundary between reality and nightmare had blurred. As he left the accursed street behind, he understood that the darkness he had confronted was not confined to Midnight Street alone, but a part of the human experience, a reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the horrors that could lurk within. The cursed lighthouse of Grimrock Isle. Grimrock Isle stood desolate, a forsaken outpost battered by the relentless fury of the sea. Its jagged cliffs rose like the teeth of some ancient, malevolent beast, and atop the highest peak perched the cursed lighthouse, a solitary sentinel that had claimed the souls of many who dared to occupy its desolate quarters. Rebecca, a woman of unwavering resolve, had taken on the role of lighthouse keeper after the tragic disappearance of her husband. The villagers had begged her not to accept the position, for Grimrock Isle was known as a place where the tempests of the sea and the supernatural converged in unholy union. Yet, Rebecca was determined to keep the light burning, a testament to her husband's memory. The island was a place of relentless tempests and ceaseless torment, a realm where the line between the living and the dead blurred. As Rebecca ascended the spiraling stairs of the lighthouse, the waves below crashed against the cliffs, their mournful cries echoing her ascent. The air was thick with the tang of salt and sorrow. The lighthouse was a testament to its grim history, its stones worn by centuries of torment. Its lantern cast an eerie, ethereal light that pierced the darkened depths of the ocean, guiding ships away from the treacherous rocks. But this light was no savior, it was a harbinger of doom. Rebecca's nightly vigil at the lighthouse was a lonely one, the wind's relentless howling and the waves' ceaseless pounding becoming her only companion. The isolation of Grimrock Isle weighed heavy on her spirit, and the endless darkness outside the lighthouse seemed to mirror the emptiness that had settled within her. It was on one of these desolate nights that Rebecca witnessed an eerie occurrence. The lantern's light began to flicker erratically, casting unsettling shadows on the lighthouse's walls. The air grew frigid, and the room seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Rebecca knew that this was no ordinary disturbance. The lighthouse had sensed an intruder. A spectral figure materialized before her, its form twisted and tortured. It was the vengeful spirit of Captain Thorn, a mariner lost at sea many years ago, and it bore the mark of a pact made with the darkness. His hollow eyes fixed on Rebecca with a burning intensity. "Keeper of the light," he intoned, his voice a ghostly whisper that seemed to come from the very walls of the lighthouse. "You have taken on the mantle of the lighthouse keeper, and in doing so, you have awakened the curse." Rebecca's heart quickened as she realized that her husband had not vanished into the depths of the sea. He had become one with the curse of Grimrock Isle. Captain Thorn sought payment for her new role, a debt that had passed from her husband to her. "I did not ask for this curse," Rebecca protested, her voice trembling. Captain Thorn's response was a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the lighthouse, shaking its very foundation. The lantern's light grew stronger, and its beam extended far out into the tempestuous sea, guiding ships toward the treacherous rocks. The curse had claimed Rebecca, and her own soul now bore the burden of Grimrock Isle. The lighthouse signals had taken on a sinister, otherworldly power, and Rebecca could no longer control their malevolent influence. Ships that had once relied on the lighthouse's guidance were now drawn to their doom, crashing against the rocks, their cries of despair joining the ghostly chorus of the damned. Desperate and filled with dread, Rebecca ventured into the heart of the tempest that surrounded the island. The storm that raged outside seemed to mirror the tempest within her soul. The very sea itself surged with anger, and the waves threatened to consume her. But she was determined to break the curse, to free her husband's soul and save her own. As she stood on the precipice of the cliffs, Rebecca called out to the vengeful spirit of Captain Thorn. Her voice carried on the gales of the storm. She pleaded for him to release her from the curse, to allow her husband's soul to rest in peace. In a climactic moment, Captain Thorn's spectral figure materialized before her, his eyes filled with torment and longing. He extended a spectral hand, and with a burst of ethereal energy, the curse that had bound Rebecca was shattered. The lantern's light flickered and dimmed, and the lighthouse signals returned to their normal, benign state. The storm outside gradually subsided, and the waves became calm. Rebecca had broken the curse, and the vengeful spirit of Captain Thorne was at last released from his torment. As the first light of dawn broke over Grimrock Isle, Rebecca felt a profound sense of peace. She had confronted the darkness that had threatened to consume her, and in doing so, she had freed her husband's soul from the curse that had bound it. The lighthouse, once a harbinger of doom, now stood as a symbol of hope and redemption. Rebecca knew that her nightly vigil at the lighthouse would continue, but it would no longer be a lonely one. Her husband's spirit would watch over her, a guardian of the light, and together they would ensure that the curse of Grimrock Isle remained forever vanquished. The lighthouse's lantern cast a gentle, reassuring glow, a beacon of safety for the ships that sailed through the treacherous waters. Grimrock Isle had been a place of despair and darkness, but now it was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of the most malevolent curses, there could be salvation and redemption. The Whispers of Harrowed Hollow. Harrowed Hollow was a village shrouded in a perpetual, haunting fog that clung to its twisted streets and ancient, gnarled trees. The villagers spoke of curses and whispered tales of tormented souls who had made the village their eternal home. It was a place where the living dared not tread after dark, for the darkness was said to be a cloak for the secrets that lurked within. Emily, a historian with an insatiable curiosity, had made Harrowed Hollow her latest research project. The village's sinister reputation and the enigmatic stories surrounding it had drawn her in like a moth to a flame. She was determined to uncover the dark secrets that had remained buried in the village's past. As she arrived in the village, the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on her shoulders. The fog was so thick that it seemed to swallow the very streets and houses, leaving only the dimly lit lanterns to pierce the obscurity. The villagers who remained shrouded their faces with heavy cloaks and avoided eye contact, as if fearful of acknowledging the outsider's presence. Emily's research took her deep into the village's history, unearthing a trail of cryptic messages, tormented letters, and fading photographs. The secrets of Harrowed Hollow had been well guarded, and the restless spirits that lingered in the shadows did not take kindly to their hidden histories being exposed. One fateful night, as Emily delved into her research, she heard whispers in the darkness. Ghostly apparitions began to materialize before her, their forms distorted and tormented. They reached out with spectral fingers, their hollow eyes filled with an unspeakable longing. "Emily," they whispered, their voices a chorus of despair that reverberated through the forsaken village. "You have uncovered our secrets. You must pay for your intrusion." Emily's heart quickened as she realized that the curse of Harrowed Hollow was not confined to its tormented history. The restless spirits that had been trapped in the village sought retribution, determined to protect their secrets at all costs. Desperate to escape the torment that had been awakened, Emily fled through the twisted streets of the village, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The apparitions pursued her relentlessly, their ghostly forms closing in as the fog thickened around her. As Emily reached the village's forsaken church, the shadows seemed to gather, their presence a malevolent force that defied the laws of the living. The church, a place that had once been a sanctuary, was now a haunted refuge for the tormented souls of Harrowed Hollow. With a final, desperate push, Emily managed to enter the church, slamming the heavy doors behind her. The ghostly apparitions wailed in frustration, their ethereal fingers passing through the wooden doors as if they were mere mist. Inside the church, Emily felt the weight of the village's secrets pressing down upon her. The walls were adorned with cryptic symbols and faded paintings that depicted scenes of torment and despair. The air was thick with the scent of incense and echoes of prayers long forgotten. As she explored the church, Emily discovered a hidden chamber beneath the altar. The room was a repository of the village's darkest secrets, a place where the sins of Harrowed Hollow had been buried. Emily's heart raced as she realized that the answers she sought were hidden within the chamber. With trembling hands, she opened a decaying chest and uncovered a collection of letters, diaries, and journals that chronicled the villagers' descent into darkness. The stories within revealed the depths of their torment, the curses they had brought upon themselves, and the desperate measures they had taken to protect their secrets. But as Emily delved deeper into the documents, the church itself seemed to react. The air grew heavy with oppression, and the candles that lined the chamber flickered ominously. The ghostly apparitions gathered outside, their hollow eyes fixed on her. "You have uncovered our torment," they hissed, their voices an ethereal chorus that filled the chamber. "Now you shall share in our suffering." In a climactic moment, the apparitions descended upon Emily, their ghostly forms twisting and contorting around her. She felt their insubstantial fingers close around her, their spectral energy seeping into her very being. The weight of the village secrets bore down upon her, and she understood the consequences of unearthing the past. The restless spirits of Harrowed Hollow had claimed her, and she was now bound to the village, forever entwined in its history and its curse. As dawn broke over the village, the fog began to lift, revealing a silent, forsaken place. The church, once a haven for the tormented souls of Harrowed Hollow, stood as a mausoleum for their secrets. Emily's research had uncovered the weight of hidden histories, and in doing so, she had become a part of the village's curse. Harrowed Hollow would remain a place of eternal torment, its secrets and its suffering known only to those who had been ensnared by its curse. The whispers of the village would continue to haunt the living, a reminder of the consequences of delving into the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. The scream in the Old Asylum. The abandoned asylum stood as a testament to suffering and despair, its decaying walls looming like a sentinel in the dead of night. The building had once been a place of torment, a repository for the vulnerable and the exploited, and now it was a forsaken husk that held the anguished echoes of those who had suffered within its walls. Michael, a seasoned paranormal investigator with a penchant for exploring the most haunted of locations, had come to the asylum with his team. The stories of the asylum's dark history had drawn them in like moths to a flame. They were determined to uncover the truth and document the paranormal phenomena that had been reported within. As they ventured into the asylum's dimly lit corridors, the air grew thick with unease, and the oppressive ambience of torment weighed heavily on their souls. The walls bore the scars of countless screams, their paint peeling to reveal the horrors that had been hidden beneath. Michael and his team set up their equipment, their cameras and recording devices capturing every inch of the asylum's desolation. It wasn't long before they began to experience the chilling encounters that had drawn them to the location. Paranormal investigations revealed ghostly apparitions, their tormented forms flickering in and out of existence. They seemed to reach out to the living, their hollow eyes filled with an unspeakable longing. The team's recording devices captured chilling whispers, desperate cries, and the anguished pleas of the asylum's former patients. As they delved deeper into the asylum's history, Michael and his team uncovered the disturbing truth. The asylum had been a place where the vulnerable had been exploited, their lives subjected to unspeakable horrors. The stories of abuse, neglect, and suffering were etched into the very foundations of the building. The spirits of the asylum's former patients cried out for release, their torment and despair a weight that the living could not escape. It became clear that the asylum had become a prison for their tortured souls, and Michael and his team had unwittingly awakened their wrath. One fateful night, as they conducted an EVP session in one of the asylum's darkest corners, the investigators were met with a shocking revelation. The spirits had a message, a chilling revelation that sent shivers down their spines. Michael, the voice whispered, its spectral presence filling the room. You were here. You were one of us. The revelation was a dagger to Michael's heart, and he felt his past come rushing back. He had been a patient in the asylum as a child, his memories of that time buried deep within his psyche. The horrors he had endured in the asylum had become a dark secret, one that he had tried to forget. The spirits that lingered in the asylum's shadows knew his truth, and they sought to expose the torment he had suffered. Michael's team looked at him with a mixture of shock and disbelief, their cameras capturing the raw emotions that played across his face. The paranormal investigations had taken a personal turn, and Michael was faced with the consequences of his own exploitation. The spirits, once tormented and exploited, now sought retribution. The asylum had become a place of reckoning, and Michael had become its target. As the spirits closed in on him, Michael felt the weight of their suffering, their cries of anguish becoming a deafening chorus in his ears. The asylum's walls seemed to close in around him, its dimly lit corridors becoming a labyrinth of torment. Desperate to escape the relentless spirits, Michael and his team made their way toward the asylum's exit, their cameras still rolling. But the spirits pursued them relentlessly, their spectral forms twisting and contorting in the darkness. As they reached the asylum's entrance, the building itself seemed to resist their departure. The heavy doors that had been a portal to the asylum's torment refused to budge. Michael and his team were trapped, their only escape blocked by the very building that held their tormentors. In a climactic moment, the spirits descended upon them, their spectral energy closing in. Michael felt their insubstantial fingers close around him, their desperate cries filling the air. The weight of their suffering bore down upon him, and he understood the price of exploiting the vulnerable, the consequences of curiosity that had brought him to this dark place. The asylum's walls seemed to close in around him, the torment of the spirits becoming his own, as the spirits exacted their retribution. Michael's past and present collided in a maelstrom of anguish and despair. The asylum had become a place of reckoning, and Michael had become a part of its haunting history. As the first light of dawn broke over the asylum, the building's decaying walls stood as a silent witness to the torment that had taken place within. Michael and his team had become a part of that history, their memories and their torment forever entwined with the spirits that lingered in the shadows. The asylum's dark secrets would continue to haunt those who dared to venture into its decaying corridors, a reminder of the price of exploiting the vulnerable and the weight of hidden histories. The scream in the old asylum would echo for eternity, a testament to the consequences of curiosity and the price of uncovering the truth. The faceless watchers of Hollowbrook House. Hollowbrook House loomed like a malevolent sentinel in the heart of a desolate town, its imposing facade a testament to a forgotten era. The mansion had long been abandoned, left to the ravages of time and decay, but its dark history and the faceless spirits that dwelled within still clung to its walls. Daniel, an urban explorer with a penchant for delving into the unknown, had heard the stories of Hollowbrook House. Its ominous reputation drew him like a moth to a flame, and he couldn't resist the temptation to explore its mysteries. He had gathered a group of friends, fellow thrill-seekers, to accompany him on the expedition into the mansion's depths. As they entered the mansion, the air grew thick with a disorienting atmosphere that seemed to seep into their very souls. The once grand hallways were now cluttered with debris and shattered remnants of the mansion's opulent past. Fading wallpaper peeled from the walls, revealing glimpses of the dark secrets hidden beneath. The group's flashlights cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating the haunting portraits that adorned the walls. Each portrait depicted a faceless figure, their features obscured by shadow and paint. The figures seemed to watch the explorers with hollow, unseeing eyes. In one room, they made a chilling discovery. A mysterious portrait hung on the wall, unlike the others. It depicted a group of faceless figures in a grotesque tableau, their forms twisted and contorted. The painting's eerie, disorienting quality sent shivers down their spines. As they continued to explore the mansion, the atmosphere grew even more unsettling. Whispers seemed to emanate from the very walls, their ghostly voices a haunting chorus of torment. The group began to feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them, as if the faceless spirits were watching their every move. The faceless spirits, malevolent and tormented, began to materialize before the explorers. Their forms were twisted and grotesque, their featureless faces a testament to their suffering. They reached out with spectral fingers, their hollow eyes filled with an unspeakable longing. "You have trespassed into our domain," the spirits hissed, their voices a chilling cacophony that reverberated through the mansion. "Now you must become one of us." Daniel and his friends realized that they had awakened the malevolent specters that dwelled within Hollowbrook House, and the consequences of their intrusion were becoming increasingly apparent. The spirits sought to make them one of their own, to take their faces and identities as payment for their intrusion. Desperate to escape the mansion, the group retraced their steps, but the faceless spirits pursued them relentlessly. The spirits' spectral forms twisted and contorted in the darkness, and the explorers felt their insubstantial fingers close around them. The oppressive atmosphere of the mansion seemed to conspire against them, disorienting their senses and clouding their judgment. The group became separated, their desperate cries and frantic attempts to find each other only serving to fuel the malevolent spirits' desire to make them faceless. As they reached the mansion's entrance, the spirits closed in on them, their spectral energy becoming a suffocating force. The heavy doors, which had once been a portal to the outside world, refused to budge. The explorers were trapped, their only escape blocked by the very mansion that had become their prison. In a climactic moment, the faceless spirits descended upon them, their hollow eyes fixed on their terrified prey. Daniel and his friends felt their insubstantial fingers close around them, their desperate cries echoing through the mansion. The weight of the spirits' torment bore down upon them, and in a disorienting and anguished haze, their identities were stripped away. Their faces became featureless, their individuality lost to the malevolent spirits of Hollowbrook House. The spirits, now filled with the stolen identities of the explorers, watched as the faceless figures joined their ranks. The mansion's dark history and its torment had claimed new victims, and the explorers had become one with the malevolent spirits that had dwelled within. As the spirits retreated into the darkness, Hollowbrook House stood in silence, its once imposing facade now a mausoleum for the stolen identities of the explorers. The consequences of trespassing into the unknown had become painfully apparent, and the mansion's oppressive atmosphere held the secrets of those who had dared to venture within. The faceless spirits of Hollowbrook House would continue to watch over the mansion, their tormented figures a reminder of the loss of identity and the price of exploring the faceless horrors that lurked within the shadows. The mansion, a place of darkness and despair, stood as a testament to the consequences of curiosity and the torment that could be unleashed when one delved into the unknown. The shadows of Wraithmoor Cemetery. Wraithmoor Cemetery, a desolate and forgotten place, lay shrouded in darkness beneath a thick, enveloping fog. The tombstones rose like spectral sentinels, their silhouettes haunting the landscape. The chilling tales of the cemetery's history had drawn Olivia, a determined paranormal researcher, to this eerie location. Little did she know that her presence would awaken the elusive shadow figures that lurked among the graves, seeking to claim her as one of their own. Olivia had heard the stories that surrounded Wraithmoor Cemetery. Whispers of apparitions and shadowy figures had piqued her curiosity. With a group of fellow researchers, she embarked on an expedition to uncover the truth behind the cemetery's dark reputation. As they entered the cemetery, the fog clung to their every step, wrapping them in a suffocating shroud of obscurity. The atmosphere was laden with a creeping dread, and the very air seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Olivia and her team set up their equipment, their cameras and recording devices ready to capture any paranormal phenomena that might manifest. It didn't take long for the first chilling encounter to occur. Amidst the tombstones, ghostly apparitions began to materialize. Their forms were shadowy and indistinct, their presence a disorienting mix of fear and fascination. They seemed to watch the researchers with hollow, unseeing eyes, their figures twisting and contorting. Olivia and her team recorded the haunting apparitions, their voices filling the darkness with eerie whispers. The shadows whispered ancient secrets, their words unintelligible yet filled with foreboding. The researchers felt the weight of unseen eyes upon them, as if the shadowy figures were silently judging their intrusion. "You have awakened us," the shadowy figures hissed, their voices a chilling cacophony that sent shivers down the researchers' spines. "Now you must become one of us." Olivia realized that the legends were true. The shadowy figures of Wraithmoor Cemetery were real, and they sought to claim her and her team as their own. The fear of the unknown was now a very tangible reality. Desperate to escape the encroaching shadows, Olivia and her team made their way toward the cemetery's entrance, but the shadowy figures pursued them relentlessly. The figures' spectral forms twisted and contorted in the darkness, and the researchers felt their insubstantial fingers close around them. As they reached the cemetery's gate, it seemed to resist their escape. The heavy iron bars, once a portal to the outside world, refused to budge. The researchers were trapped, their only escape blocked by the very cemetery that had become their prison. In a climactic moment, the shadowy figures descended upon them, their spectral energy becoming a suffocating force. Olivia and her team felt their insubstantial fingers close around them, their desperate cries echoing through the cemetery. The weight of the shadowy figures' presence bore down upon them, and in an anguished and disorienting haze, they lost their identities. Their faces and forms became shadowy and indistinct, their individuality stripped away. The shadowy figures, once elusive and mysterious, now watched as the researchers joined their ranks. The cemetery's dark history had claimed new victims, and Olivia and her team had become one with the shadowy figures that had lurked among the graves. As the figures retreated into the darkness, Wraithmoor Cemetery stood in silence, its fog-covered landscape now a mausoleum for the stolen identities of the researchers. The fear of the unknown had taken on a new dimension, and the cemetery's shadowy atmosphere held the secrets of those who had dared to venture within. The shadows of Wraithmoor Cemetery would continue to watch over the desolate landscape, their enigmatic forms a reminder of the consequences of meddling with the dead and the price of encountering the unknown. The cemetery, once a place of eerie fascination and dark legend, had become a chilling reality that claimed all who ventured into its depths. The Curse of the Forgotten Orphanage. An eerie silence hung over the forsaken town, and at its heart stood the abandoned orphanage, a place where lost innocence and shattered dreams had given rise to vengeful spirits. Lucy, an urban explorer with a penchant for uncovering hidden mysteries, had been drawn to the orphanage's dark reputation. Little did she know that her exploration would awaken the vengeful spirits of the neglected children who once lived within its walls, seeking justice and retribution. The orphanage had been a place of neglect and sorrow, a desolate refuge for children abandoned by a world that had turned its back on them. Its walls were marred with the pain and suffering of those who had once called it home, and now their spirits lingered in search of solace and justice. Lucy's curiosity led her to the orphanage's decaying doors, which creaked open as she entered the forsaken building. The air was thick with the weight of sorrow, and the darkness that clung to the walls seemed to pulse with the pain of lost innocence. Lucy and her team set up their equipment, their cameras and recording devices poised to capture the paranormal phenomena that had been reported within the orphanage. It didn't take long for the first disturbing discovery to occur. Hidden rooms within the orphanage depths held remnants of the past, forgotten toys, tattered children's clothes, and writings that spoke of despair and neglect. The voices of the orphaned children seemed to echo through the walls, their cries for help reverberating through the darkness. As they ventured deeper into the orphanage, ghostly apparitions began to materialize. The children's spirits, their faces etched with sorrow, reached out with spectral fingers, their hollow eyes filled with an unquenchable longing. "You have come," they whispered, their voices a haunting chorus of despair that filled the rooms. "We seek justice, and you must help us." Lucy realized that the legends were true. The spirits of the neglected orphans were real, and they sought retribution for the suffering they had endured. The cycle of neglect and pain had left them no peace in life or death. Desperate to understand the children's pain, Lucy and her team delved further into the orphanage's history. They uncovered the stories of the orphans, the tales of abandonment and abuse that had filled their days. The spirits of the forgotten children had been left to suffer, and now they sought to make others bear witness to their torment. One fateful night, as they conducted a séance in one of the orphanage's hidden rooms, a shocking revelation occurred. The spirits had a message, a revelation that would change Lucy's life forever. "Lucy," they whispered, their spectral presence filling the room. "You are one of us." The revelation struck Lucy like a bolt of lightning. She had been an orphan at this very institution, her memories of that time buried deep within her psyche. The horrors she had endured as a neglected child had become a dark secret, one she had tried to forget. The spirits that lingered in the orphanage sought to expose her torment, and Lucy's team looked at her with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Their cameras captured the raw emotions that played across her face. The paranormal investigation had taken a personal turn, and Lucy was faced with the consequences of her own neglect. The spirits, once abandoned and suffering, now sought retribution. The orphanage had become a place of reckoning, and Lucy had become its target. As the spirits closed in on her, Lucy felt the weight of their suffering, their cries of anguish becoming a deafening chorus in her ears. The orphanage's walls seemed to close in around her, its hidden rooms becoming a labyrinth of torment. Desperate to escape the relentless spirits, Lucy and her team made their way toward the orphanage's entrance, their cameras still rolling. But the spirits pursued them relentlessly, their spectral forms twisting and contorting around them. As they reached the orphanage doors, the building itself seemed to resist their departure. The heavy doors that had once been a portal to the outside world refused to budge. Lucy and her team were trapped, their only escape blocked by the very orphanage that had become their prison. In a climactic moment, the spirits descended upon them, their ghostly energy closing in. Lucy felt their insubstantial fingers close around her, their desperate cries filling the air. The weight of the orphaned children's torment bore down upon her, and she understood the consequences of neglect and the cycle of suffering. The orphanage's walls seemed to close in around her, and as the spirits exacted their retribution, Lucy's past and present collided in a maelstrom of anguish and despair. The orphanage had become a place of reckoning, and she had become a part of its haunting history. As the first light of dawn broke over the orphanage, the building's decaying walls stood as a silent witness to the torment that had taken place within. Lucy and her team had become a part of that history, their memories and their torment forever entwined with the spirits that lingered in the shadows. The orphanage's dark secrets would continue to haunt those who dared to venture within its forsaken walls, a reminder of the consequences of neglect and the cycle of suffering that could be unleashed when one delved into the unknown. The curse of the forgotten orphanage would echo for eternity, a testament to the pain of lost innocence and the price of bearing witness to the suffering of the neglected. The Wailing Winds of Evershade Manor. Evershade Manor, perched atop a cursed hill, was a desolate and windswept place where time seemed to stand still. Its weathered facade and ivy-covered walls told the tale of a place haunted by more than just the elements. Richard, a desperate man seeking refuge from his own troubled past, had heard whispers of the manor's dark reputation. He sought sanctuary, but little did he know that his arrival would trigger the release of the tormented spirits that dwelled within, and he would have to confront his own dark secrets to escape their clutches. The manor had been abandoned for generations, its halls and chambers echoing with the agony of the past. The curse that had befallen it left the surrounding land barren and bleak, the very winds that swept the hilltop howling with sorrow. Richard's life had taken a dark turn, and the weight of his choices had led him to Evershade Manor. He believed that the manor's isolation could offer him a chance at redemption, a respite from the guilt and pain that had haunted him. Little did he know that the manor itself was a place of torment, and his arrival would set in motion a series of events that could either bring him salvation or seal his fate. Upon entering the manor, Richard was struck by the overwhelming sense of melancholy that permeated the air. The once grand halls were now filled with the remnants of a bygone era, their faded grandeur a stark reminder of the past. It didn't take long for the first paranormal disturbances to occur. Objects moved of their own accord, and the mournful cries of unseen entities filled the empty rooms. Richard and the ghosts of Evershade Manor were linked by a common desire: redemption. The spirits that haunted the manor were tormented souls seeking release from the curse that bound them, and they saw in Richard the potential for salvation. As night fell, the wailing winds outside intensified, their mournful chorus a chilling reminder of the manor's dark history. The spirits began to materialize, their forms twisted and contorted by the agony of their existence. They reached out to Richard, their spectral fingers yearning for release. "You are our hope," they whispered, their voices filled with wailing sorrow. "Redemption is within your grasp." Richard soon realized that the legends were true. The tormented spirits of Evershade Manor were real, and they sought his help to break the curse that bound them. The consequences of seeking refuge in the haunted had become all too real. Desperate to understand the spirit's pain, Richard delved into the manor's history. He uncovered the stories of those who had lived and died within its walls, their suffering etched into the very fabric of the place. He learned of the dark secrets that had cursed the manor and bound its inhabitants to an eternity of torment. One fateful night, as he ventured into the manor's hidden library, he made a heart-wrenching discovery. The spirits had a message, a revelation that would change his life forever. "Richard," they whispered, their spectral presence filling the room, "you must redeem your past to break our curse." The revelation struck Richard like a bolt of lightning. His past, filled with darkness and regret, had become intertwined with the manor's own history. The spirits of Evershade Manor sought not only their own salvation but Richard's as well. To free them, he had to confront the pain and guilt that had haunted him for so long. As the wailing winds outside grew more intense, the manor's walls seemed to close in around him, and Richard felt the weight of his own suffering. He understood that the power of redemption was within his grasp, but it would come at a great cost. The spirits closed in on him, their spectral fingers reaching out to touch his very soul. Richard felt their agony and despair, their cries echoing through the manor's chambers. The curse that bound them and the guilt that burdened him had become one. Desperate to break the curse and find redemption, Richard and the spirits of Evershade Manor united in their quest for salvation. They sought to confront the darkness that had plagued their lives and to find a way to break the curse that had tormented them for generations. As the first light of dawn broke over the cursed hill, the manor's ivy-covered walls stood as a testament to the power of redemption in the face of darkness. Richard and the spirits had found solace and release, breaking the curse that had bound them. Evershade Manor, once a place of torment and suffering, now stood as a symbol of redemption and hope. The consequences of seeking refuge in the haunted had become a tale of salvation, and Richard had discovered that the power of redemption could break even the most formidable of curses.